Hey everybody, and welcome back to Fantasy Football Game Week 11. And guys, don't call it a comeback, but I got 64 points this week from an average of 53, so I'm pretty happy. Of course, it was all down to one man, Lundstrand of Sheffield United, who I can't honestly tell you why I put him in my team. Well, no, I can actually. I can tell you exactly why I put him in the team. I wanted to get rid of Kurt Zuma because I wasn't convinced Chelsea were very good at keeping clean sheets, which I have proved very right of from not only the weekend, but the midweek game against Ajax. And I wanted to have a look and see who would get a clean sheet this week. And I saw Sheffield United were playing Burnley, and I was like, there's a 0-0 if ever I see it, so we'll put on Sheffield United defender. He happened to have the highest number of points. He was within my price range, so I switched him over. I got 21 points out of it, so, sometimes you can't call that lucky, because at the end of the day, my thoughts were, he'll keep a clean sheet, and he's a high, rated defender, as in he's got a lot of points this season, but I didn't expect him to score 2 goals, so, yeah. And I expected him to keep a clean sheet, just not score 2 goals. So very happy with that. Abraham up front doing very well as well. I think it was a goal and an assist from him. Jimenez scoring. Haller with an assist, I believe. Alexander-Arnold assist, but not a clean sheet. Yeah. So, but really Salah and Sterling very disappointing. Sterling was captain, Salah vice, because, well, we'll talk about their games, but I mean, I would say when you look at it in the big scheme of things, both of them got 3 points, but it was not a comfortable 3 points, was it? As many people predicted, me included. So just goes to show, though, at the end of the day, the Premier League is, one of the best leagues in the world because, it's not just about a top two. Like, teams can take points off them. I know they didn't take any points off them, but teams can take points off them. We've seen Man City get beaten by Norwich and stuff like that. And we don't want it to become a La Liga situation where we have a Barcelona or Real Madrid. I know that's not this season, by the way. They're all struggling. But my point is, we don't want to have a La Liga situation where we have these like 2 strong teams that just steamroller, the smaller teams, and then it's basically about them, trying to get maximum points off each other and stuff like that. Like, you don't want that. That's not competitive. You want to be a challenge. I feel the Premier League is kind of going in that way a little bit, but I don't necessarily feel that that's a money situation as much as a coaching or managerial or setup situation. So in other words, Liverpool and Man City, I think at the minute, are the pinnacle of setting a club up and running it well. Yes, they're spending lots and lots of money, but other teams are spending lots and lots of money. Man United, Tottenham spent a fair whack in the summer. Arsenal have been, spending some money. West Ham spent quite a lot of money. There are teams out there. It's not just a case of like these guys are spending hundreds of millions and everyone else is spending 20. It's a case of, I think Everton spent close to 100 or something like that. So teams are spending money. I appreciate that. When you look on the long scheme of things in Man City, like the amount they've spent is a lot more than most other clubs. But there is also a setup there. They are bringing through some younger players as well. Same with Liverpool. So, as much as everyone can bemoan oil money or foreign ownership or whatever, I think realistically a lot of these, I see it as like the kind of Chelsea model in a way of what they tried to strive and succeed, which was when Abramovich came in, he spent a lot of money to build Chelsea up, to get that reputation, to get them as a big club. Once they established there, they built this massive kind of youth network. There's always this ongoing joke about them farming players out, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, everyone knows like the cost of bringing a youth player through, in your club compared to the cost of buying a top elite player is vastly different. So, you want to try and bring through as many as you can and make sure they're competitive. It's tough sometimes, but that's, a better model, because if you can build Chelsea up to an elite club, be getting that Champions League money, be getting, be challenging for titles and cups, etc., and doing so while not spending as much in the transfer market as others, then you are, that is a business model basically. But also not weakening your side, and bringing through kids, which is why, I said at the beginning of the season, the transfer ban for Chelsea, I think, was the best thing that could happen to them. It would have crippled other clubs, absolutely, because they don't have the infrastructure. Like a Man United, it would have absolutely crippled them because they just don't seem to have a structure in place. They have some promising youngsters, of course, coming through, but nowhere near. When you look at Chelsea, and I've realised I've gone off tangent here, but when you look at Chelsea and their players, you see Abraham, you see Mount. They've done their time on loan. They've done their time on loan. They've played in competitive leagues. The Championship is still a very good league at the end of the day. It's a very competitive league. They've done their time there. They've done their season. They know what that's like. You see the likes of, say, a Brandon Williams or a Mason Greenwood coming through, or one of those guys at Man United, and you're like, the problem is they haven't done their time. This is their first season. Like, they haven't been out on loan. I don't know when Man United stopped sending players out on loan and what the reason was, but it seems to me like that happened. They used to have a great kind of loan system, and you'd see these kind of young Man United players coming through at other clubs, and then they go back to the club. And I know that there's pluses and minuses. You look at Man City and say Phil Foden should have gone out on loan. He's not getting a game time, but at the end of the day, he's training with world-class players every day. World-class setup with a world-class manager that might be worth more than him. I mean, I think he would have got a Premier League club, but even so, if where's he going to go? You have to be careful, I mean, I guess somewhere like Bournemouth would have been ideal for him, but then, he's still not playing with the quality of players that he is, and that makes a difference. You could parachute Leo Messi into the Bournemouth side. He's not going to be as good as he is now because he's not playing with the same quality of players. Paul Merson said that when he went to Walsall towards the end of his career, I think it was, and he was like, I was making passes which I'd make day in day out at Arsenal, and none of the other teammates were on the same wavelength because they hadn't played that kind of level before, not in a rude way, but that's just what it is. So anyway, I've gone really off tangent. We got 64 points, 53. I moved up a place in the league, guys. Yay. I'm 25th now. Great. What was the top score? We got, bloody hell, 94. Jesus Christ, well done. That's got to be the top, hasn't it? Notable 87, 84, and an 86. But let's have a look at that. 94 from Michael Hauser, Bacalo Express. Wow. Bench boost plate, Kors Lundstrom, Donk, Alexander-Arnold, Mount, Salah, De Bruyne. I mean, you've got to say, bench boost, Soyuncu, yeah, very good. Rico, Jorginho, cool. I mean, you've got to say, like, that is a great total, like 94, but you must be gutted that, the top team didn't produce, because if you had a Sterling, a De Bruyne, and a Salah performance, just a goal or an assist from those players, like, that would have been well over 100. Crazy, really, when you think, like, you'd have imagined that everyone else would have been, like, the slightly weaker, and those guys would have been the performers, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Anyway, well done there, Michael Hauser from America. See, Americans do know about football, guys. They do know about football or soccer. I'm just playing, Michael. Congratulations. So, we'll start off with the first game of the day, which was Bournemouth Man United, I believe. Was it? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, Watford Chelsea was the 5:30 p.m. kickoff, I think it was. Who could have seen Man United losing this game? I mean, just about everyone, really. I mean, everyone was like, "Oh, Man United, they're on them. They're on a kind of a, they're coming back to their best. They've had 3 away wins when they didn't win away. Yeah, but guys, those away wins were Norwich, who, I'll be honest, Norwich are terrible at the minute. It's not necessarily their fault. They have like most of their defence out on a lot of other players, but realistically, they are terrible. We have a Partizan Belgrade team who are not very good. They're not really... I mean, if they're in the UK, they'd probably be in like League One, maybe Championship, lower half Championship, something like that. And then you have a Chelsea in the Carabao Cup who, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a win, but it's the Carabao Cup as well. So... take that with a pinch of salt. It wasn't necessarily Chelsea's first team. I think Man United did play quite a strong team, which might also be a reason why they didn't win this game as well. But I think Bournemouth, out of those, and also like the Premier League, I think, with no disrespect to Carabao Cup, because I actually think it's a decent enough cup and it's a good cup to win. It gets you started early. I think that's why Man City really love it, because getting that buzz, I think, in sort of February really pushes you on for the end of the season. I can totally see the mentality of it, and people who write it off, I think, are idiots, because you usually come out of Christmas, January, February, and you are like shattered, but mentally, you are coming into the most important part of the season, the business end of the season, as they call it. You have you'll probably be coming into your, if you're a top club, your Champions League knockout stages, maybe your Europa League knockout stages. You'll be coming into the FA Cup starting up, lots of stuff going on. But having that boost, I think, of a cup final and potentially winning it in Man City's case, I think really helps you to push on. You can have a, it's almost like celebrating, your season up to that point, and then using that and pushing on from it. So I think it's very underrated as a kind of psychological tool to push on for the season. But we see Bournemouth statistically looks fairly even. Man United having more possession, not really having the shots on target though, to be fair. Bournemouth having that, having the touches, having the passes, having the tackles, having the corners, but just no penetration really from Man United. Man United look very, very average, I think, going forward, in terms of creativity. They seem to have, when I look at this, and I'd imagine this is probably at the minute their strongest kind of midfield and attack really on there. You could argue that Martial's just coming back from injury, etc., etc. Pogba, I know, is still coming back, but let's kind of take Pogba out of the equation, because firstly, when he is in, he's wildly inconsistent, and secondly, I don't think he even wants to be there. So if you take that away, you look at it and go, Rashford, I mean, promises a lot. I worry about him though, in terms of, come through very young. It's almost, it sounds horrible, and it's a bit up, but it almost feels like he's in this kind of almost like this, he's got this potential, but he's in this like broken home, where he's gone through manager after manager. He's had 3 managers now, and he's still a very young player. 3 different types of playing. You had Van Gaal's, very kind of statistical, like passing and possession based. Mourinho with obviously his kind of more defensive, approach, and then Ole Gunnar with whatever the hell his approach is. No one's quite sure. And you worry about how that's going to build him up. He's been playing in different positions. There doesn't seem to be this consistency with him to be able to, I don't know, just nail down a place. He's got everything he needs to be a sort of top player, whether that's a wide left or a centre forward. I don't even think he knows, or a number 9 or a number 10 or a number 11 or whatever. I don't even know if he knows, but there's something kind of missing there. You got Pereira, who, I mean, if you look at Pereira, Fred, Daniel James, McTominay, I know Daniel James is young, but I'm just looking at this as how they are now, not like, potentially in a few years they could be great, but how they are now, none of them would be good enough to get anywhere near a Man United team, or should be near enough a Man United team. Like, if you took the midfields of, the top 6 in the country, or top 7, top 8 of the country, compared it to Man United, it would be nowhere near it. I don't think Man United have a terrible defence. I think Ashley Young is, it's time for pastures new for him. He needs to do a Gary Neville and just kind of be like mid-season, just retire in a way. And I feel sorry for him. Like, he has been a wonderful player. Like, we do forget about Ashley Young. Like, he has been a quality Premier League player over years, but he ain't no left back. I know Luke Shaw's been injured, and he's just doing a job at the end of the day, isn't he? he's out there getting paid. I mean, what do people want to do? Him to turn around and say, you know what, I'm not going to play because I'm not good enough? Or do you want him to go out there and try and do his best? You know, if he's being picked by his manager, the manager should be picking Brandon Williams. He's a much better left back, and he's coming through. And if you're going to promote this youth side, don't start playing a 34-year-old left winger who got repositioned into a left back because he lost his pace. It's not going to work for you, is it? I will say as well, the weird thing about Man United as well is Chris Smalling is kind of tearing it up over in Roma right now. They're really happy with him. He's been doing really well. And they're looking to buy him permanently. Yeah, there wasn't an option to buy permanently, but they want him. And you turn around and go, Victor Lindelof for me has never looked comfortable. The weird thing as well is Man United seem to really favour buying sort of what you would call homegrown players. So, British and Irish kind of players, or really just British actually. And yet they let Chris Smalling go to Italy and are playing Victor Lindelof. So, I mean, that's got to be an Ollie thing. I mean, he must have had a decision in that, because I don't think it would be... I mean, what I would imagine would be them saying, like, hey, if you're going to bring Maguire, we've got too many centre-backs, so you're going to have to get rid of one, because otherwise they're going to have, Lindelof, Jones, Smalling, Bailly, who I think is still injured, Rojo, and Maguire. It's like 6 centre-backs, basically. So I understand why they need to get rid of them. I just don't understand why they got rid of Smalling over Rojo or Lindelof. Yeah, Lindelof has never looked good, in my opinion, since he came to the Premier League. But anyway, defence, midfield, very weak. Very, very weak. No creativity there. It's very kind of like run-of-the-mill people. There's nothing there that I'm turning around and going, there's someone there who's going to do something and add a spark. The only player possibly you say is Daniel James, but the guy's still really young. He has been playing in the Championship and really only kind of broke through last season, and then you're kind of asking him to be the creative force in this Man United team. Like, that is crazy. It's absolutely mental. And listen, you can be more pragmatic like that. You don't necessarily have to have the most creative midfield. But then on the flip side of it, the midfield doesn't seem to do anything else either. Like, I think McTominay has been a lot better. But Fred, like, people are like, one week Matic is better than Fred, the next week people are saying Fred's better than Matic. Like, they're both terrible. It doesn't matter which one's better than the other. If one's a 2 out of 10, one's a 3 out of 10, they're still crap, So they kind of need to just write off the Matic and Fred thing and get someone in. And I know, like, it's very easy to say Pogba in there changes the dynamic a lot more. Maybe put him in the Pereira position there, so he's that kind of like just behind the striker, whatever, let him have the attacking freedom, blah, blah, blah. But for me, I've seen a handful of appearances from Pogba in a Man United shirt where I've actually thought that he was a world-class player. Otherwise, it's been very, very run-of-the-mill. You look at the bench, you have a couple or 3 youngsters, Garner, Williams, Greenwood, Lingard, Lingard has been off the radar for 18 months. Whether he's kind of... I don't want to just wildly speculate and wildly kind of put words into people's mouths, because you never know what's going on, but it seems to me like Lingard just almost looks a little bit like he's just not interested in football anymore, in a way. Like, it's more about the other stuff for him. He's got a lot going on, as a kind of young, I don't know, entrepreneur, and I don't know, almost if that, I know he's been injured for bits and stuff like that, and maybe he just needs a bit of a run in the team, but every time he comes in, you're like, if he hasn't, I think it's like been a year or something like that since he's had an assist or a goal, and you're like, that's not right. Mata for me has been a wonderful player, but he hasn't been a wonderful player for Man United for over a year probably as well. And whether that's because, again, he hasn't fitted into a system, a style, or whether that's because he's just become a little bit too old in the tooth, to play at this level, I don't know. But either way, there's nothing there that you can bring on that's going to change your game, is there? Absolutely nothing. Mason Greenwood might grab you a goal. He's a good up and coming young striker, but like, what is there? It's a very sorry looking Man United team. People will big up all they want. There's some positives in there. You got Maguire, you got Wan-Bissaka, I think, who are both very good defenders. De Gea's a solid goalkeeper. but everything else is just so average. It's bang average. Losing at home to Bournemouth, I'd say, is the level that, or losing away to Bournemouth is the level that Man United are at. You know, fair play to Bournemouth. Josh King with a goal which was just weird because it seemed like he was just like playing keepy uppies in the area almost. He just had so much time. Wan-Bissaka was at fault for that goal. But then again, Wan-Bissaka is not a centre back, which seemed to be the position he was in. So, I don't know. It's a strange one. I think Wan-Bissaka's probably been the best defender at Man United this season by a long way. Maguire is still kind of bedding in, but I think Bissaka's really taken to the role. But I don't think that there's just been. I think it's without doubt they need to get rid of Solskjaer. But then again, the problem is if you get rid of Solskjaer and you bring in someone else, but everything in the back room or everything in the setup isn't done right. You still have Ed Woodward, doing your transfers or whatever. You still seem to have a terrible scout team because they never seem to get good players anymore. You just you have a club which doesn't want to buy the players that you need or whatever. Or, your youth setup isn't producing things. They need a manager who's going to come in and be able to get them back into Champions League, going to be able to get them challenging. But at the end of the day, the only way they're going to do that is by spending a horrific amount of money, to do that. And then on the flip side of that, they'll be lucky if they qualify for the Europa League this season. So how do you even attract those players? Is the Man United brand and name still big enough, or are you going to have to pay extraordinary salaries to players just to get them to come to your club because they would be wanted? I mean, if you look, if some of the top players in the world were moving around this year, would any of them even be, batting an eyelid towards Man United? Or, is what they're going to have to buy. I mean, because you look at it and turn around and go, okay, people turn around and go, Harry Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, they were good signings. Were they? Like, really? Because Maguire has played for a kind of mid-table Premier League team. Wan-Bissaka played for a mid to lower end Premier League team. He played for one season and did look good. So what they were buying there was they were buying players with potential almost. They weren't buying finished articles as well. When Mourinho, I think he was trying to buy, was it Alderweireld or Vertonghen? One of the two, I can't remember. He was trying to buy a finished article in a defender, someone he doesn't have to wait 2 seasons for them to bed in, knows the Premier League, knows how it's working, knows where it's going. And I'm just like, were they, like, every now and then you do need to buy a Daniel James or someone like that, someone with potential, of course, you can bring through. But they shouldn't be your main signings, should they? If you're Man United, I mean. Surely it should be a case of you should be making some marquee signings to strengthen your squad. Maybe they got burnt with Pogba and were like, we don't want to do this anymore. We need a different approach. We need to buy younger players and then build up, and maybe it'll take a few seasons. But also, you don't have a structure in place for your club to do that. You don't, like, Man United as an entity cannot survive without being at the top level, because all the money you're making from sponsors is not going to be there anymore, because they don't want to sponsor a club that's a mid-table Premier League side for, the prices being charged, which are probably for elite your world club. So it's weird. I could talk about Man United all day. It just seems so plainly obvious from the outside, and sometimes it's frustrating because you turn around and look at it and you go, and all the fans kind of know it, and they look at it and they go, okay, the owners are only interested in money. But on the flip side of that, like, all the owners are interested in money. Liverpool's owners are interested in money. Man City's owners are interested in money, but they know that money comes from success. Whereas Man United seem to think that money comes from sponsorship deals, but those sponsorship deals are dictated by success on the pitch. So I don't know. It's difficult. I feel sorry for Man United as a club, because I know that's strange because a lot of people love to hate Fergie's Man United, like they really did, and I think a lot of people have really revelled in joy at seeing this decline, and I totally get it. Like when they were the best, there was this arrogance about them, and this, then Fergie was just this utter arsehole, but they were ruthless, and no one can turn around and say that they they did everything the right way in for what they did. They built, they had this long-term manager, they had this vision of how they played, but also Ferguson would change his tactics a lot as well. He'd rebuild these teams. He'd have more kind of reinventions than Madonna, and it was incredible to watch. So this team consistently winning every season for such a long time. Like there's barely been a team who's been able to do that. And yeah, just watching this fall from grace from with these players as well. Like, I mean, how many of these players would get into? I think I've done this before, but how many of these players would get into a Man United side under Fergie? Like, really, not very many. There might be a few on the bench, but other than De Gea, who his form has been very poor, but then again, he's got not got a settled defence in front of him. But otherwise, you wonder who else would be there. When you look at the players of yesteryears, the Roy Keanes, David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Cantona, Berbatov, York Cole, Van Nistelrooy, Rooney. It's so many fantastic, incredible players over the years at Man United. And then you look at them now and you're like, what the hell happened? I don't think I've seen a decline like this from a top club before. I'm trying to think if there's been another club who reigned for so long and then just declined through mismanagement, like so. I'm going to call it rapidly because they were at the top of their game for a good 15 years or so, and their decline has been at about 4 or 5. So it's been rapid, and they were still, even under Mourinho, they still did a cup double. So I'd call that a successful season in a way. But now, like since kind of towards the end of Mourinho's reign, and then with Solskjaer coming in, it's just been this rapid decline. So yeah, strange. As I said, I could talk about them all day. But on Bournemouth, that's all I'll say. Bournemouth doing what Bournemouth do. If we get the table up, actually, Man United are in 10th. Look at that form, though. It's shocking, isn't it? Crystal Palace still above them, despite us having a loss, a draw, and a loss in the last 3 games, and playing Chelsea next. It'll probably still be above them. I can see Man United losing to Brighton all day long. Currently, Brighton very much a team with a structure and a system, who know what they're doing. Speaking of teams who've declined, although I'd say Arsenal's decline, Arsenal didn't reign anywhere near as long as Man United did. And their decline has been a lot slower, although it's sped up a little bit under Emery, who, the Granit Xhaka thing, it's a weird one, isn't it? Like, Granit Xhaka obviously did not play in this game. I say obviously. I think it would have been a really poor choice if they'd have played him at home in this game. I think he would have got a bad reception because he apologised in the end, although there's some debate about it because it was kind of written in, I think, German originally and then translated to English, and I think the German version came across better as an apology than the English version, although whether or not that was intentional, because it was almost like paragraphs are rewritten, if it makes sense, from what I've heard. So it's a weird one. I'd be surprised if Granit Xhaka isn't moved on in either January or the end of the season. I think it's got to that point where he's not a star player for them. I know he was captain and Emery seems to love him, but he's not a good player. As in, he's not a good enough player for a top 6 team, which is where Arsenal aspire to be. So I think he'll get moved on, to be honest with you. I think he probably wants to move on as well, to be fair. But yeah, Arsenal, this was the shocking thing about this, is Arsenal are at home to Wolverhampton Wanderers. No disrespect to Wolves, it's not been their finest season. They're moving up the league now, they're in 12th now. Obviously had a terrible start. They're kind of battling back. Too many draws. The Europa League kind of hit them a little bit, I think. But 24 shots to 10 is pretty bad when you think about it for an Arsenal at home. Aubameyang scoring, set up by Lacazette. Those two are obviously fantastic. Weird thing for me, like Arsenal, and this is some of the things Arsenal fans hate about Unai Emery, is when you look at his substitutions, that they're chasing the game. After the 76th minute, Raul Jimenez equalises. Rightly so. Wolves deserved that equaliser, and then you kind of see like you're chasing a goal in the last minute. You have Kieran Tierney in the 87th minute. Who did he bring on? Said Kolasinac. You had Nicolas Pepe. You're chasing a goal at home, and you bring on a left back for a left back. Like, what is going on in this world? You had Nicolas Pepe on the bench. You bring on Gabriel Martinelli, who absolutely has played brilliantly in the Cups, scored a lot of goals. But you had Nicolas Pepe. You paid like 80 million for this guy on the bench. I don't know. I mean, weird. For me, very weird. Taking off Lacazette after 60, I don't know if that's a tactical or maybe a fitness issue. It's just a bit weird, isn't it? Like, everything about Emery's reign is just a bit weird. Everything. I saw this like Twitter thread about him where this guy like predicted exactly what was going to happen, like over when he first joined, because he was like a big I think Seville, or like he was a Spanish journalist, I think, who followed Emery a lot, and he absolutely has kind of predicted and nailed down what was going to happen. This guy who basically tactically, substitutions will be completely uninspired, tactically just naive. Players will, no sort of discipline or authority in the squad. Players, it seems, just do what they want, very indecisive about stuff, and it's just what it is. It's not what Arsenal needed after Wenger. They needed a stronger personality. I don't know when he's going to get sacked, whether it will be this year or whether it will be at the end of the season. But I think he will get sacked, because the Xhaka thing, even without that, take that away, you're still looking at, Arsenal's results in the Premier League have been, their last 5 games. They got a win against Bournemouth, okay, but it was a tough one. They drew with Man United when they probably should have won. They lost to Sheffield United, a promoted side. They drew with Crystal Palace after being 2 goals up and could have lost. And they drew with Wolves as well. Both home games. They're 6 points off 4th place. Sheffield United and Bournemouth and Brighton breathing down their necks. And they just look very poor. I think that's the bigger problem, is you turn around and look at that in isolation. You go, well, actually, 5th, it's not the worst thing in the world. Man United are in 10th, Tottenham are in 11th. But I think it's just performance-wise very poor. Very, very poor, and just consistently been poor since they started. I think Wolves are coming back now, and they will push on, I think, and get their kind of rightful upper mid-table place, I think, in the Premier League. We'll see how they do in the Europa League. I believe they're still in it, so we'll see how that affects them. Who knows, they could win it. Who knows, stranger things have happened. I think Fulham got to the final of the Europa League, so you never know. Liverpool, Aston Villa. 3 points, but they did it the hard way, didn't they? Aston Villa being 1-0 up. When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. You're like half-time, 1-0 Aston Villa. I was like, what the hell's happened here? But, the late show from Liverpool, and that's what you have to do if you want to be champions. Like, you grind it out. The one thing you say about Liverpool is they do not give up. Like, they never give up. And that, you can tell that is a Klopp thing that has been brought in. Those players completely buy into it. They completely believe. Most teams would have crumbled 3-0 down, at home to Barcelona, after the first leg. They believed they could do it, and they did it. And same way here, Robertson in the 87th, Mane in the 94th minute. Just incredible. And they needed it, because Man City will be relentless this season. Like, Man City will chase them down. Man City will not give up either. That's, built in them. And yes, they're 6 points behind, but they're playing each other next week. That could go to 3 points potentially. So they needed that. And if they'd have drawn then, it could have been down to 1 point next week, and then suddenly the nerves start getting in. So, it's going to be an incredible game. I'm desperately going to try and watch it, because it's not a title decider in any way. There's lots of things that can happen, but you do feel psychologically that could be a blow for either team, big time there. But we'll see. Especially with Liverpool still unbeaten in the league after 11 games, which is a great achievement. I don't think they're going to go the whole season unbeaten. I think they've got too many games. They won in the Carabao Cup where they didn't really want to, I think, in a way, weirdly. And as a result, they now are basically playing 2 games in 24 hours, and one of them in a different continent because they've got the World Club Cup. And so they're probably going to have 2 squads. And oh my God, it's just craziness, just absolute craziness, I think. But we'll see. I mean, they're playing Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup. I imagine they'll put a weaker squad out for that. It's a shame they kind of have to do that, but they've just got so many games. I think it's in Dubai, the World Club Championship. Dubai or Qatar, one of the two. Can't remember. But yeah, I feel sorry for Aston Villa, but I think they'll kind of be a little bit heartened by that. And I would say as well, I'm sure the stats will back me up. Yes, it's not what Liverpool didn't deserve, is it? 25 shots to 4, 6 on target to 2, 73% possession, nearly twice the touches, about nearly 3 times the passes. It was a rearguard action from Aston Villa, let's face it. But yeah, fair play to them for getting the goal. John McGinn, I think, will be destined for a bigger club. Been playing very well. Probably Tyrone Mings as well. I think Tom Heaton's been pretty decent in goal as well. He made some good saves. And then Liverpool, they had that crazy Carling Cup with Arsenal, which they went through as well, despite Arsenal being I think it was 2-0, 3-1, 4-2, and then they drew 5-4, and then Liverpool went through on penalties. It's just craziness, basically. But yeah, fair play to Liverpool for getting the win. That's what champions do. If they want to be champions, that's what they got to do. Brighton comfortably beating Norwich. Norwich are in masses of problems. I called it from the very beginning. People were bigging them up. When they got those few wins to start with, they just didn't look like they had the quality to stay up. I felt, and I think I said, Sheffield United, weirdly for me, looked like the team who might stay up because they just looked like they played in a style which is better suited to being underdogs, if that makes sense. With Aston Villa and Norwich, they play with a style which they want to attack, basically. They want to attack and beat their opponents, whereas Sheffield United are much more kind of like a counter-attack or a much more defensively structured team. They've been playing really well, don't get me wrong, Sheffield United. I'm not saying that they're like men behind the ball just trying to nick a goal. They have been playing very well, but they've not looked... Norwich haven't looked like they're going to in any way stay up this season. I don't even think it's going to be a case of there's going to be 3 worse teams than them. I think they're just going to be one of the bottom 3, realistically. I don't know if they have the power to buy their way out of it in January either. They've been really unlucky that they have had a lot of injuries. They're playing Alexander Teti in defence. He's never played in defence in his life. He's a midfielder, but they just are out of defenders, basically, or central defenders, and that is one of the most important roles when you're a promoted club is central defence. And I think they've got 3 out. So, well, it's tough. It's tough on them, but that's unfortunately going to be what it is. And they didn't have a shot on target in the game, did they? Nope. You're not going to win games like that. Brighton, on the other hand, after a shaky start, moving on up. Still some results I'm sure they would have wanted to do better in, but beating Tottenham, beating Everton, beating Norwich, quality. I hope they beat Man United, I really do. As I said from the very beginning, I'm a Crystal Palace fan, but I like Brighton. I lived very near there. I really like the city, and I like Graham Potter as a manager. I think he's a very good manager, actually. I think he really gets it. I think he really tries to kind of build this structure that he kind of believes in. You know, he does a lot of stuff which people might consider a bit wacky or stuff like that, but he's very much into kind of team building. He's very much into having a squad and kind of building up. I think he's suited to a team like Brighton, which perhaps don't have the resources to go out there and buy, star players all the time. They can buy, a couple here or there, but they have a real kind of like team focus, I think, and so he's doing really well. I'd love him to be at Crystal Palace, even though Roy Hodgson is Roy Hodgson. He's the guy. He's not going to be there forever, I don't think. Well, he might be. You don't know. Yeah, so well done to them. Man City, again, doing the same thing as Liverpool almost, although I would say, I wouldn't say more comfortable, but, they didn't score in the 90 plus 4, did they? But in the same way, very similar stats actually to Liverpool against Aston Villa there, really, in terms of shots and possession and touches and passes and things like that. And same kind of thing, basically, really, knocking on the door. Southampton get an early goal. Fair play to Southampton for kind of battling after a 9-0 loss to Leicester and then having to play Man City twice, after that, once in the Carabao, once here. They didn't disgrace themselves. I have a feeling that they could still go down. I don't think they're a very good team, but we'll see. I don't think Everton will go down. Aston Villa will be interesting. Newcastle were surprising me. And I don't think the rest of them are bad enough to go down. So I think the bottom three we have now could well be the bottom three. The only exception could be Aston Villa could go on a bad run, or we could see a second half collapse from the likes of a Sheffield United or something, but I doubt it. So I think we could be looking at the three teams here who get relegated, but we'll see. It's still, we're only a third of the way through, or a quarter of the way through, really, just over a quarter of the way through. So we'll see. But Man City, as I said, they will be relentless in their chase to Liverpool. They won't give up. So massive game next week, just monumentously huge. Speaking of Sheffield United, though, they obviously won 2 goals from Lundstrand, one for John Fleck. And yeah, they just look really good. I really like Sheffield United. Chris Wilder has been quality. We'll see with them. I'm not one of those people who's getting carried away with them, because I've seen it before where a team comes along and they build up, and then, or do really well and you're like, oh, we're in 6th sort of thing, and then they just have a collapse in the second half of the season. You never see them again. So let's see where they go. I think they should strengthen a little bit in January. But defensively, joint best defence in the Premier League with Leicester. Not bad. Still a little low on the goals, but not too bad. And yeah, really unbeaten in their last 4 games. They played Watford, Arsenal, West Ham, Burnley. Spurs next. Who says they can't beat Spurs? Not me. Newcastle went 3-0 up before a massive scare from West Ham. But I thought Newcastle, when I look at Newcastle, I quite like them, weirdly. I like this guy, Alan Saint-Maximin. I like him a lot. Don't get me wrong, his finishing was atrocious, but my God, the guy's rapid. He is absolutely rapid. I like him a lot, actually. But he needs to be able to finish, because he missed 2 very good one-on-ones really badly. Almiron, I think he's a good player. He just hasn't adapted to the Premier League very well. And Joel Linton is not really the player he's been asked to be. So he's asked to be a guy who holds the ball up, playing defensively, hold the ball up, blah, blah, blah. He's not really that type of guy, But fair play to him, 3-0 up, some good goals there, held on in the end. And West Ham, I can't see Pellegrini saying, look, this is a terrible run. You got Burnley next. They need to get a win. But fair play to Newcastle. They've had a couple of wins in their last 4. Lost to Chelsea, lost to Leicester. No disgrace there. Beat Man United, drew with Wolves, beat West Ham. That's good. I hope they stay up. They deserve better. But and Steve Bruce deserves it as well, because Steve Bruce he's like a stepdad who kind of comes in. He's like a really nice guy and he tries hard, but he's not the dad. And Rafa will always be the dad, and people always love him. At Newcastle, they'll always be angry with Mum, who in this case is Mike Ashley, for breaking up with the dad they loved and stuff like that. And they always look over at him. And then the new stepdad comes in. He's really nice, and he's doing his best, trying to be really nice to him and everything. But he's always there, like he's always just the second choice. And eventually they might love him, but it's going to be a lot of hard work. So I feel sorry for Steve Bruce. It's a tough job to come into. So I've still got a little bit of a bunged up nose this week. Chelsea beat Watford 2-1. Pulisic again scoring. Tammy Abraham again scoring. I think he's the joint top goal scorer in the Premier League now. So he's having a good season. Delfeu with a late pen. But Watford are in a lot of trouble. It's not a total disgrace to lose to Chelsea. They're on a great run. They have the best form in the Premier League in the last 5 games. They've been doing really well. Crazy game against Ajax midweek as well, where they were 4-1 down and then brought it back to 4-4 after Ajax had both their central defenders sent off within the space of like a couple of minutes. Just a crazy game. Chelsea needs to tighten up that defence, like without doubt. That's their Achilles heel right now. When you look at their lineup, you turn around and go, okay, Tammy Abraham's banging the goals in. Very strong midfield, I think, with some really good backup as well in midfield. We can bring the likes of, Reece James did really well midweek. Hudson-Odoi's like quality as well. But the defence for me looks a little bit weak at the minute. It could build, like it's still young and it can build, but it does look a little bit weak on there. And it's very funny in the Ajax game where Kepa scored an own goal when I think it was a shot kind of like hit the post, or it was a cross or something like that. I think hit the post. Oh, it was like a cross into the box, wasn't it? Hit the back post, like he was diving for it. Hit the post, came back, smacked him in the face, and went in. And Batshuayi was like, "Welcome to the meme club." After we all know what happened with him and kicking balls against the post. But yeah, 4-4 and crazy game for them against Ajax. But I think Watford are going down. I don't see them being able to stay up. We'll see what happens in January. Like the ability to buy players, Watford can spend a bit of money. At the end of the day, they are more of an established Premier League club than some of the other teams down there. But we'll see what happens from there. Crystal Palace 0, Leicester 2. I was more annoyed that we conceded for another set piece. Leicester are really good at the minute. They are just really good. Other than that loss to Liverpool, which they were a little unlucky in, they're having a great season. I don't think they're going to challenge for the title, but you never know. But I think they would be very happy if they got third comfortably. And they are looking like the third best team in the country right now. So fair play to them. Leicester, prime example of a club doing things the right way and getting the rewards for it. Not spending crazy amounts of money on players. Great scouting network. Buying an expensive player when they need to, like Tielemans, who they already knew was good. Selling on Maguire, who some might argue was the third best centre-back at the club. Sonku's come in and looked brilliant. Johnny Evans is just... I don't know why Man United ever got rid of Johnny Evans, really. He's been phenomenal since he left. Like, it seemed ridiculous. I think at the time they had a lot of very good centre-backs, but when you look at it now, you're like, well, Johnny Evans would walk into that Man United side. Crystal Palace, though, very poor, really. We could like early on, looked pretty good. But again, finishing chances is a problem at Palace. As much as I love Ayew for the memes, at the end of the day, we need to sign a striker. For God's sake, we're turning out to be like Arsenal or something. And then Everton-Tottenham, a game which was massively overshadowed by the horrific leg break, fractured dislocation of Andre Gomez's leg, which was absolutely shocking. I mean, it just looked awful, and I feel sorry for Son and Aurier, because if you didn't see what happened, essentially Son made a bad tackle from kind of the behind, a little bit to the side, and it kind of, that didn't cause it, but it put Gomez like off balance or off stride, and he couldn't stop going straight into Aurier. He obviously kind of felt like as he like landed, his whole foot just twisted to a right angle, essentially. Sorry if you're eating, but it was horrific. And obviously, I hope he gets better soon. That's awful when anything like that happens. And Son got sent off. It was rescinded though. It has been rescinded after. I think it was harsh. Well, some people think it's harsh, some people don't. I mean, for example, in criminal law, like the severity of the punishment can fit with the severity of the consequences of the crime. So in other words, if you were in a fight in the street and you punched a guy, like, and nothing happened really other than you just punched the guy, you could both kind of like walk away or whatever, and maybe you get a caution from the police or something. If you punched the guy, he got knocked out or fell, whacked his head on the curb and died, that would be manslaughter and you'd be in prison. So it's the same action, but the consequences of it are, of what it caused, the recklessness of it and what it caused, you could argue had much worse consequences, which is why I imagine he was sent off. So I can see why he got sent off, but I'm also, of all the players, you get the feeling like Son Heung-min is a very nice guy. And I don't feel like it was a malicious tackle. I just feel like it was a forwards tackle, if that makes sense. Just a bad one. And then Aurier just couldn't do anything about it. I think he had to be subbed off afterwards because he just couldn't really cope with it. So you kind of feel sorry for it, because the thing is, people will be like, oh yeah, it's just, oh, he can't his stomach, look at the injury. But what you got to imagine is what's going through your head that point as a professional footballer who your career can be over within seconds from a horrific injury. You only get one chance at being a professional footballer, and we've seen it time and time again where players have a horrific injury and never come back from it, or most of the time never come back as the same player which they went before they got injured. So imagine doing that to another fellow professional. It's pretty horrific, and doing it in a way in which you're like, you didn't want to do that, obviously. It was an accident, but you're part of that. I imagine it would be pretty horrific. I'd probably, if that happened to me, I'd probably want to take a day off work or something like that to just get my head straight. So I could well imagine him not wanting to finish that match. 1-1, I think, was a fair result. It was a terrible football match. I was kind of listening to it on the radio, and there was just nothing going on really. Both these teams really poor this season. I think Everton really need. They're 17th, for God's sake. They brought in Fabian Delph. They brought Alex Iwobi in. They brought Moise Kean in. Who else did they buy? Anybody else? Look at this team. This team is probably better than Man United's team, and they're 17th. They need to make a change quickly. I don't think they'll get relegated, but they should be challenging for a top 6. This is the season to do it. You got Spurs in 11th, Man United in 10th. This is a season for Everton to crack the top 6. And they're 17th. You don't get these opportunities all the time. Man United could change manager and spend big in the summer and they could be right back in there. Arsenal could change manager and be right back in there. Tottenham, I don't know what Tottenham could do, but they could be right back in. They could get their mojo back a little bit, and they could be right back in there. You don't get these opportunities. Leicester took their opportunity. Well, they're taking their opportunity twice now. They took it once when they won the league. The teams were in terrible form that season, and they made the best of that, and they took that advantage there. And this season, the teams are dropping out, and they're taking advantage of that. So you have to do that, and Everton aren't, and they need to act quickly, in my opinion. Silva needs to go. It's funny, I see so many people talking about Ollie needing to go, etc, etc. I don't see many people shouting for Silva to get fired, and I just find it weird because they're terrible. It's relegation form that they've got. The one win, and it was against West Ham, but just bad losses all the time. They played Southampton next. All right, Southampton would need to score 11 goals or 12 goals past them to get Everton back into the relegation zone, but essentially they could go level on points with 18th or relegation zone if Southampton managed to win that, which by the way I don't think they will, but so we'll see. Let's have a look at the fixtures coming up. I mean, obviously it's dominated by oh yeah, that's getting rescheduled. Obviously, it's dominated by the Liverpool Man City game, 4:30 on Sunday. I think I'm off on Sunday. Oh no, actually I'm working on Sunday. That's terrible. Damn, I'll be at work. Oh well, I'll have to just have that on in the background maybe. Man United Brighton should be a decent game, I think. I'm honestly thinking Brighton can win that. Wolves Villa, that's a big Midlands derby. If you don't know, Wolverhampton and Aston Villa are all in the Birmingham area. So that's a derby there, which will be very interesting, very feisty. Leicester Arsenal, I think, is a really good game. I think Leicester will spank them personally. I think Arsenal are in a bit of disarray at the minute. I think this could be a draw. I wouldn't go as far as to say Sheffield United beating Spurs, but I could see them getting a draw there. I think Everton will beat Southampton, to be honest with you. But if Southampton ended up winning that, I really wouldn't be that surprised by either. But if I was having to make a bet, I'd say Everton to win that one, to be fair. Newcastle, Bournemouth, I can see a draw probably. I think Bournemouth are better than Newcastle, but I could see a draw. Burnley, West Ham, that's got draw written all over it in my opinion. Chelsea, Crystal Palace, probably a Chelsea win there, let's face it, most likely. And then the Friday game, Norwich, Watford. I mean, that's a massive game as well, to be fair. I think Norwich will win that because I think they'll attack and Watford are crap. They haven't got a win in 11 games. And yeah, no one's talking about Watford, weirdly. Watford have 5 points from 11 games. They haven't got a win. They've conceded 23 goals and scored 6 in the Premier League. They have a minus 17 goal difference. If this carries on, they'll be on like less than 20 points by the end of the season, which would be the lowest points. I'm sure that would be one of the lowest points totals in the Premier League. But to be fair, I think people look at Watford on paper and go, they're a better side than what they're showing here, but they're still not showing it. So at what point do you just turn around and go, no, they're a bit crap? Yeah. So yeah, Liverpool City, the big one, going to be very interesting. Let me know your thoughts. As always, I'm interested, but I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.